Alright, welcome back. And this time around, we have JJ back again. So I've not seen JJ on my channel for a long time because I was busy with home rental stuff. But now, we are finally back to work. And this time, we want to talk about something important but you may have missed. And that is insurance. Specifically, we're not talking about life insurance. We're talking about insurance relating to your home or your property. And because we're going to cover five aspects, five examples, starting from the most mandatory to the most optional, and maybe slightly even debatable. But first of all, before you even get insurance, you need to have a home. And before you get a home, it's better to get a licensed real estate agent to help with your purchase. And that is JJ, right? He's been a friend of mine. And also, I'll put his details down here. You have seen him in one of my property videos. And he's very knowledgeable. So look for him, don't look for me. Okay, let's go into topic, right? Insurance. Let's talk about the most mandatory one. And this is specific to HDBs, right? Especially for those of you who just collected your flats, you're unsure what kind of insurance. The first one definitely you must get is fire insurance. And fire insurance sounds like it just protect you from fire, right? How difficult can it be to understand? But actually there's some difference with other kinds of insurance. So maybe I let JJ fill you in on what is fire insurance all about and why is it mandatory and yeah, all that stuff.
Okay, so fire insurance is a compulsory insurance if you are using HDB loan. So if you have paid down your house full cash and all that, right? Actually, fire insurance is not compulsory, right? But fire insurance is compulsory for most of us because most of us choose to take a HDB loan. Even if you take a loan of $100, right? You also have to go and buy fire insurance. However, the good news is that HDB fire insurance is extremely affordable. I believe it's a couple of dollars.
A couple of dollars to be exact. I paid less than $5 recently. So that's like in August, $5 for 5 years premium. Not 1 year or 5 years. So not expensive as you think lah. So you don't need to think too much. Just get because you must get anyway. And there used to be two insurers appointing this. One of it is FWD and currently we are with Etika. So for you, maybe you were from a different era from mine. So mine is Etika and yours is FWD.
Correct. My time was FWD, but I believe I paid a similar price, which is definitely less than $10 lah. Yeah, it's very cheap. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter which one you go with. You just know you have to get it and you just get. But is it really just cover fire though?
Yes, in many ways, but this one you really have to go and check the fine print because every insurer has different terms. But I do believe that it covers things like act of God as well, so fire being one of them. But don't take my word for it. Please go and check because every 5 years it changes.
Yeah.
Right. So now that Chris is covered by Etika, I'm not too sure. I think it should cover lah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it not cover then?
Basically, what it doesn't cover is non-structural things. So fire insurance only cover anything that's got to do with the structure of the home. So like the structural beams, the pillars, the walls, and basically your four walls. Anything that is on your four walls, your floor, is covered by fire insurance. If it's not, then it is not covered by fire insurance.
Yeah, so take it that all your whatever things that you add on to the new home is not covered. Things that are original that you move into an empty house tour. Okay, you'll see my empty house tour. You'll see whatever things that's there. Fire insurance is supposed to cover all those because those are not built by us. Those are built by HDB and the developer. So by right, they should cover it. Let's move on to the next one, which is HPS. So HPS, based on my understanding, is the Home Protection Scheme, and is managed by CPF, not HDB.
Yep.
So for those of you who are taking HDB loan paid via CPF, then you all have to go through this HPS, which is mandatory because you are using your CPF funds to pay. There needs to be some form of assurance that you are able to pay up and you're using CPF, so you better don't play. And that's where the insurance come in for HPS.
Correct.
But I think what is different from me and JJ is that I'm using my CPF to pay home loan, but JJ is not. He's using cash. So maybe I'll let him share his thoughts on whether he's subscribed to HPS and why or why not.
Okay, so for me, I am using cash to pay my mortgage, even though it is a HDB loan. So by right, I can opt out of HPS, but I decided to go ahead lah because I think the premium is quite worth the coverage. So I think at the end of the day, insurance is a form of a peace of mind, right? So if I use my HPS as a peace of mind, if anything happens to myself or my wife, I know that the house will be paid for and then we don't need to worry. Whoever that's left don't need to worry about it lah. Yeah, so I think it's still quite worth it because in many ways, subscribing to HPS is part of the process. Yeah,
Which
correct.
brings me to this point, right? Is there any misconceptions about HPS? Because based on my understanding, it's like, okay, so two owners lah. I get 50%, my wife get 50%. Then one party leave the world should be okay, right? Is there a common misconception that people should clarify on?
Yeah, so I think this one I only learned after I became a real estate agent because I do a lot of submissions for clients, right? So I actually realized that during the submission stage, right, you can actually, okay, minimally you must cover 50-50. So if you are equal joint owners, right, each person must be covered 50-50. That's the so-called compulsory rule. But you can also opt to cover 100%. So in the beginning, when I first found this out, it's like, 50-50 not equal 100%, man. Like, so what this means is that, say now we buy a house together, we pay 50-50, we share 50-50, our HPS also covered 50-50. If I pass away, my 50% is covered, is paid for.
Yes.
But whatever mortgage that you have left, right, you still have to continue paying. But if it's covered 100%, which you have a choice to opt for 100%, then if I pass away, then my partner will have the entire mortgage that is left to be paid for.
Yeah, so it's like how you want to manage your risk lah. If you're okay with 50%, that is fine. But if you want to make it 100, that's also possible. So for those of you who have this misconception, please go and read the terms and conditions very carefully because it may affect how much premium you want to pay for your HPS. And in fact, with more coverage comes with higher premiums, right? I remember for my HPS, it's about $100 per year. So I just paid, right? So it's like 5 years, every year you have to pay. So that's roughly around $100 per year, which some of you think is affordable, some of you think it's not affordable, but some of you think it can be replaced with a term life insurance policy, which we will discuss in the later half of this video. So bear with me because I know there's a lot of debate going on. Before that, let's move on to the next one, which is home insurance. Because based on my very basic understanding of home insurance, it's usually like a add-on to the fire insurance. Because when I applied for my fire insurance, they try to upsell me. So sometimes the alarm bells ring, like, okay, so you got this insurance, you want to upgrade it. So some people may have this, I would say misconception, may have this idea that, okay, so this thing they're trying to upsell me is bad. So we are here to clear the air. What is this home insurance all about?
Okay, so home insurance is kind of like a rider to your fire insurance. So remember just now we discussed that the fire insurance only covers your four walls basically, right? So how about your expensive $50,000 Rolex watch or my $3,000 MacBook, right? All these things are not covered. So even in the event of a fire, it only covers your four walls, right? So in the event of a fire, if you have home insurance and fire insurance, not only your four walls are covered, your belongings, your furniture, your soft toys, all these are also covered within your home insurance.
Okay. And JJ, do you subscribe to home insurance?
Yes, I did because same as you, when I was buying my fire insurance, the upsell thing pop up, then I'm like, okay lah, I think actually, because home insurance also covers things like theft.
Yeah.
And I think it's just unforeseen circumstances, right? The most important thing is our valuables, right? Most of us use our laptop to work and it could be quite expensive, right? Yeah, our cameras, all these will be covered under home insurance.
Yeah, so and that will include your expensive rental as well if some of get damaged by whatever reasons. Of course, there are specific reasons that you have to read terms and conditions on what is eligible or not. Because we are not licensed financial advisors, we cannot advise you on that. But what I can share with you is we have good deals for home insurance, which you can check out my description below. So I'm partnering with SingSaver. There's this list of home insurance offers that you can look at. Okay, so if the offer is good for you, go and sign up. But not forcing you to sign up. You all go and do your own research on whether it's good or not. So let's move on. I think something new from this is the private mortgage insurance because I have never heard of this. I thought it's like all these other insurance already cover, or why we still need private mortgage insurance. So JJ, can you fill us up that?
Okay, I think the first thing about private mortgage insurance, right, is that if you do not own a HDB flat, you own a condo or a landed house, then you cannot buy HPS
Oh yeah.
HPS is for HDB, right? So then you have no choice but to go for a private mortgage insurance. Yeah, so they work very similarly. They are both mortgage reducing insurance that covers your mortgage.
Okay.
Yeah, it covers your mortgage. So you have the option to to pick either if you are in a HDB flat. However, if you're in a condo or a landed property, then you have no choice but to go for the private one. So they are very similar. They are both fixed premiums, and as you pay off your mortgage is lesser, then your coverage becomes lesser lah. So it's quite similar. But the difference is that your HPS, you can use CPF OA to pay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, but your private mortgage insurance must be paid with cash.
Yes.
Correct. So back to like my situation, right? Even though I'm using cash to pay for my mortgage, but I opt in for my HPS. So then the question is, am I using CPF to pay for my HPS or cash?
Yeah.
So I'm actually using CPF to pay for my HPS because very cheap lah, right? So like I don't have much money in my CPF because I'm self-employed, so I top up my own. Yeah, so I don't have your employer contribution lah. So but I can afford to pay HPS with my CPF. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that is something new to me lah, because most of the time I only research about all this public housing one, private housing I'm not familiar. So go insight for some of you who may not have known and are stepping into the private property space lah. Okay.
I think one important thing about HPS is that everybody think that by default, right, you will be covered by HPS because it is compulsory. But I have seen very, very rare cases that the authorities come back and tell you that I'm so sorry that we cannot cover you with HPS because you have a certain health condition.
Okay.
Yeah, like terminal illness and certain things, right? Because HPS is activated when the person pass away.
Yes.
So if you are set to pass away in 2 years because doctors say so, then of course no insurer will cover you lah.
Yeah.
So HPS is quite affordable, right? Whereas for private insurance, there is still a chance that they might cover you, just that you have to pay what is known as loading. Yeah, and this loading might be quite big depending on what your illness is. Yeah, so comparing HPS and private mortgage insurance have a lot more flexibility in the different choices, and private mortgage insurance is transferable from property to property, whereas HPS is not.
Okay, so HPS is tied to the owners only.
Tied to the flat.
The flat.
Yeah, not even the owners, the address.
The address. Okay, so I will assume that private mortgage insurance is much more expensive and more premium than HPS in terms of how much it paid, though, right? Based on this fact.
It depends. You have to go and get the quote from your insurer and go and compare. And don't wait until the last minute when you get your keys. Then you go and get the quote. You make sure you want to make a decision before you get your keys.
Correct. Which brings me to my final example, which is the term life insurance. Because I know some of you have very huge term insurance coverages up to $1 million on your life, covering your total permanent disability, and some of you CI as well. Because in a case where you are not able to work, or in a case where your mental capacity is not able for you to work, then your home loan how? That's where maybe your term life insurance can kick in and cover the rest of your mortgage.
Yep.
So some of you may have this idea in your head that it makes sense because I would rather insure myself on a term insurance plan, and I don't bother about mortgage insurance since the outcome is the same anyway. As long as I die, there is a payout. There is a payout that can pay off the outstanding mortgage. And that makes sense to some people because especially if you had signed your term insurance at a very young age, maybe in your 20s, your premium will be ultra low compared to someone who signs in his 30s or 40s when they got the property, right? So that is some consideration that you may have to compare, see which one works better for you. And for myself, I do believe that this is the case. And especially for some of us who are in SAF, right, we have this min-death term insurance. But we will not go into the details, but you all know that this insurance is very cheap for high coverage. So that could be an option for you as well.
So if you had a choice, because now you have no choice, you have to go for HPS. But if assuming today you had a choice, right, would you still go for HPS or would you actually opt for the term life option?
Actually, I would prefer the term life option there because, like I said, the premium is fixed already based on the time I signed. But HPS is based on the time I got the flat. Yeah, and the fact is that as you pay down your mortgage, your coverage gets lesser.
Correct. Right? But your premium remains
the premium remains the same. But your term life, the coverage is the same one regardless. So that's for me lah. I don't know for you because you have to do your own research, your own calculations. But I'd like to maybe ask JJ, what do you think of this term life versus HPS comparison?
Right. So for me, it's quite interesting, right? Because I don't need to opt in for HPS because I'm using cash to pay my mortgage, Yeah, so I opted in because I think it's also out of convenience. Like, it's the whole process of getting HPS is very smooth, and somehow I can use CPF to pay and everything. And frankly, my mortgage is quite low because I actually paid quite a large amount upfront using cash already, right? So I think it makes sense for me because my personal term life coverage is very, very low. Because for me my own situation is that my term life coverage is very low, but if my executor executes my will properly, my liquidity from my stocks and my assets should be able to help my wife and whatever dependents that I have survive for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Right? Assuming that they don't anyhow do stupid stuff with my assets, then it should be quite good. Right? So my term life coverage is not as high as what people would usually recommend. So therefore, I actually opted in for the HPS, even though some people might think that it's a bit bo hua lah, because you pay same premium, but then the mortgage is reducing.
Yeah, so that's about the main comparison of term life versus HPS. We are not licensed financial advisors. We cannot advise you what we will do, but we can share what we feel. Then you own self go and make your own decision now, because now we cannot provide all these opinions online already.
Yep.
But the thing is, one thing I forgot to mention about the fire insurance, you have to apply before you collect your keys, because that may be different from your era when you collected your keys.
Correct.
Because mine is the most updated info as of 2024.
Right.
In the key collection letter, they mentioned that you have to apply for the fire insurance before you arrive to collect your keys. And that can be done online. So it's no more like in the past, you collect your key, then you go up to the office, apply insurance. That may be
correct.
what you did.
Correct. During my time, there was that option to do it on the same day. Yeah, but I do think that this is good because you get everything prepped before your key collection, and because there's a lot of things to take note of. Yeah, so it's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah. Alright. So better take note for those of you who are collecting your keys soon. Congratulations. Please get your fire insurance in order before you collect your keys. So that's about it. The 5 insurance that we covered: fire insurance, HPS, home insurance, private mortgage insurance, and of course your term life policy if you have one and you choose to opt in for it.
So out of all these 5, right, in your opinion, Chris, what is the ones that it's must have one? You definitely should have it.
Okay. If you ask me, in my honest opinion, other than the fire insurance, the must-have one is the term life policy. Okay, because like they always say in the investing world, buy term, invest the rest. Buy term, invest the rest.
Correct.
So the term comes first, then the invest comes later. You want to insure yourself first. That's what I believe in.
Right.
Yeah. Then the rest, I feel that is all supplementary. Even for HPS, it's mandatory for me, I take it. But if I can choose to not use it, I will choose not to use it. This is just my stance. May not be right for you.
How about home insurance? You don't want to protect your belongings?
Okay, I do.
Okay.
But the time I don't have the enough research yet, I still thought they were trying to upsell. So now after this episode, I will take a closer look based on what JJ have mentioned. Yeah, so yes, I'm going to sign up for my home insurance if it makes sense. Okay,
if it makes sense, yeah.
But if it doesn't make sense to you, don't sign up. The link is there, but you don't have to sign up.
Yeah.
But if you want to use, you use.
Yeah, I got upsold lah. I buy already, then I go and read. Then like like that one. Yeah, so it's very common to be upsold on these kind of things, but you must know what you're being covered for lah.
Correct. So the thing is that for home insurance, you can still buy it after you collect your keys. You can take your time one. Okay. Only the fire insurance is compulsory before key collection, but the rest, make sure you go and discuss with whoever is living with you, whoever is financing the home with you, and make sure that it is the essential part. And then you're going to apply, because otherwise, if you're one want to apply, one don't want to apply, then how? Okay, go and discuss your own self lah. Okay. So yes, hope that this has been a good education or entertainment content for you all. Do know that none of this is financial advice, because we are not licensed financial advisors. Insurance, all this is very personal. Whatever that we say, we can only apply it to our own life. So do your own research, talk to your partner, talk to whoever is financing your home. And yes, next up, we will be talking about home rental costs, because that's coming on the next episode. And if you want the episode to come earlier, go and comment rental +1. We will compare costs. Okay, that one very exciting one. We'll see you in the next one.